With the sun shining brightly on the blistering Mojave Desert, three friends, Heather, Deidre, and Charlotte, catch a ride to Heather's father's grand mansion. When they enter the lavish house, they talk about the meteor shower they had planned to watch later in the night. As the girls continue to admire the luxuries in the house, Deidre pulls out her phone and starts recording a vlog. She brightly discusses their planned activities and introduces Heather to the virtual audience. She then takes a video of Charlotte and explains her friend's disdain for modern technology. Deidre grabs Charlotte's retro phone and waves it at the video. Uncomfortable with being shot and introduced, Charlotte tells Deidre about the discomfort she feels about being recorded. Rolling her eyes, Deidre waves off Charlotte's feelings and walks away. Later in the evening, the girls struggle to get any signal as the meteor shower begins. For a moment, they notice the unusual activity of the meteors in the sky, but they wave it off. They continue enjoying their night through a round of margaritas at their pool deck while reminiscing about their high school experiences. However, when Heather and Charlotte call out Deidre's toxic persona during high school, Deidre starts defending herself. She explains that people need an edgy personality to maintain their self-worth. However, she suddenly gets interrupted by an object landing in their pool. Shaken, the girls cautiously approach the object floating in the pool. As they notice it starting to leak into the water, Heather frantically tells them to remove the object. When they manage to take it out of the pool, they notice the pungent smell it emits. After carefully inspecting it, Deidre pipes up and tells them it might be a clump of human feces. She then explains that it could be a frozen chunk of feces dropped from a plane. Skeptical, Charlotte disagrees and points out that the gooey object has a face. They go back inside the house to try to research the strange object. While Charlotte scans a book for possible similarities of the object with animals, Heather begins to panic about the object possibly damaging her father's property. Deidre quickly calms her down and helps her to bed, leaving Charlotte in the living room. With little to no answers from the book, Charlotte also goes to bed. The following morning, the girls wake up hungover. Calm and relaxed, Heather apologizes to Charlotte for her panicky state the night before. When they all gather in the dining area, Heather and Deidre notice their gadgets malfunctioning and immediately turning off. A moment later, when Charlotte gets her retro phone, it also acts up and turns off. Frustrated that she can't use social media, Deidre rants about how her absence will ruin her online social life. Despite her friends not believing her, Deidre continues to explain that she won't be able to get paid by her sponsors if she doesn't produce more videos. She dramatically tells them that people will think that she died if she doesn't add another post. Then, the girls get reminded of the strange object they had found the night before. They quickly leave the house only to find the object gone and a gooey dark trail. Having taken a weapon from the house, Deidre and the group follow the trail into the garden. When they notice the creature lying on the other end of the trail, they slowly approach it. They suddenly jump when a boy greets them from behind. He introduces himself as Brett and explains that he's there to do his brother's work, tending to the garden grounds. When Heather asks him to take out the strange object from the garden in exchange for cash, he refuses. However, he suggests removing the object in exchange for a kiss. Hearing Brett's offer, Heather and Deidre push Charlotte to do the act. Despite her disgust, Charlotte kisses Brett. However, she begins to fall into a trance-like state as the object sends telepathic waves to her. When the kiss ends, Brett pulls away and proceeds to the garden. As Brett sets up a sack next to the object, he uses a shovel to lift it. Surprised by the weight of the gooey mound, Brett heaves and successfully transfers the object to the tarp. However, when he kicks it, it suddenly screeches, making Brett run away in fear. When the girls notice Brett fleeing from their property, they hear the creature's screeches from the garden. When the girls find the object, Deidre argues that they have to kill it. However, Charlotte sternly disagrees and explains that they shouldn't kill an innocent animal. Torn between her two friends, Heather remains undecided. Charlotte proceeds to calmly approach the creature, talking to it quietly. The girls, then, agree that they should take the object somewhere outside their property. However, when they try to drag it, they quickly give up, surprised by the object's unusually heavy weight. They agree to leave it out while they continue to enjoy their weekend. They go on to spend the day with another round of drinks and narcotics while taking a photo shoot for Deidre's makeup beauty line. Later in the evening, while the girls are asleep, Charlotte wakes up to shrieking and crying. She goes out of the house with a flashlight to find that the noises are coming from the creature. She quickly goes to Heather and wakes her up. However, Heather angrily refuses to get up and goes back to sleep. Left on her own, Charlotte takes matters into her own hands and returns to the garden. As she tries to pick up the creature, she gets stunned at how light the alien is. She brings it into the house and grabs Deidre's milkshake from the fridge. As she feeds it, the strange creature purrs in contentment. The following morning, Deidre notices that her shake is gone, and the creature is now snoring in the living room. Livid, she barges into Charlotte's room and yells at her to explain why the creature is inside the house. When they all gather in the living room, Heather angrily tells Charlotte to get it out of the house immediately. However, when Charlotte tries to carry the alien, it quickly screeches, ringing the girl's ears. Angry and upset, Deidre tells Charlotte to go into town to find someone to help take out the creature. After she trudges back to her room, Heather tells Charlotte about a nearby neighbor Edna who they can borrow a car from. They agree to use Heather's buggy to ride to Edna's home. While the pair make their way to Edna's, Deidre's sleep gets interrupted by shrieking. In an attempt to end the thing's life, Deidre mixes rat poison with a drink. However, before she can give it, the creature traps her in a trance, letting her mindlessly drop the glass. Meanwhile, Heather and Charlotte pull up into Edna's driveway. Heather, confused, points out that Edna's dog isn't there like it usually is. They knock on her door only to have it opened by the wind, the house completely silent. They enter the house and look around, in awe of the different gadgets and machines lying around the area. While Heather writes a note for Edna, Charlotte roams around, admiring all the science and written notes around the room. In one of the notebooks, she notices a red highlight on the meteor shower date. Intrigued, she shares her discovery with Charlotte right before they leave. When they return to the house, they find Deidre casually floating in the pool. When they tell her about their fruitless trip, she replies calmly. Shocked, Heather and Charlotte notice Deidre's unusually calm state instead of her usual sassy persona. Returning to the house, Heather starts to worry about the creature still lying in the living room. When she points out the creature's disgusting smell, Charlotte tells her she can bathe the alien-like animal. However, Charlotte continues panicking about the animal. To calm her friend down, Charlotte offers to cook food. On the verge of panicking, Heather agrees and walks back to her room. At that moment, Charlotte notices the broken pieces of glass on the carpet. Over lunch, they notice Deidre eating more food than usual. As they watch Deidre sloppily eating her food, Deidre brightly suggests they should exercise. Heather and Charlotte refuse, explaining that it's too hot outside to exercise. After finishing her food, Deidre begins a full workout session. Later that night, Heather wakes up and walks to the living room, the atmosphere dark and suspenseful. She's caught in horror when she finds that the creature has mutated into a large blob of meat, encapsulating Deidre's nude body in its grasp. Before she can react any further, the creature traps her in a trance while she mindlessly takes her clothes off and joins Deidre in the gooey pool of red. The following day, Charlotte finds Heather and Deidre sitting casually on the pool deck. She tells them that she needs to go back home for work, but they emotionlessly tell her that their phones aren't working. Thinking that her friends have overused nicotine and aren't themselves, Charlotte asks them where the creature is. Deidre tells her they put the alien in her room and explains that it's more comfortable. Confused at her friend's weird reactions, Charlotte goes downstairs to Deidre's room. When she opens the door, she finds the creature lying comfortably on the sheets. However, when it releases an ear-piercing shriek, she quickly closes the door and returns to Heather and Deidre. She tells them that she needs to leave for work, but they still reply nonchalantly. Frustrated at her friend's insensitivity, Charlotte asks to borrow Heather's buggy to return to Edna's place. When she arrives at Edna's house, she opens Edna's car to look for her keys. After failing to find the keys in the car, she knocks on Edna's door, but no one answers. Then, she opens the door and looks for the keys inside the house. However, she gets sidetracked as she looks through the various notebooks around the tables. Then, while scanning the pages, she comes across an exact drawing of the creature. As dread slowly seeps into the air, she notices 2 gunshot holes in the wall. She cautiously walks outside to see Edna's bloodied, fly-infested corpse beside a shotgun. Scared and shaken, she runs back to the buggy and drives away. When she arrives back at Heather's house, she frantically tells her friends about her discovery. Heather and Deidre reply indifferently, with no hint of sympathy in their condolences. Knowing that the creature is dangerous and must be stopped, Charlotte walks back to Deidre's room. She approaches the alien and asks the creature what it is. In an instant, the creature sends telepathic images through Charlotte's mind, attempting to trap her in a trance. However, Charlotte notices herself removing her clothes and immediately leaves the room. She returns to the pool deck to ask her friends about what just happened but receives no clear answer. As if they're living in a world of their own, Heather and Deidre reply in a carefree tone. However, when Charlotte suggests calling the police for help, Deidre becomes defensive. She tells her that they should cherish and monetize the creature instead. As the argument worsens, Deidre gets more jittery and out of control. However, their argument gets interrupted when Heather points at Deidre's growing stomach. At the same time, Heather's stomach enlarges too. Charlotte watches in horror as her friends drop to the floor while a black substance spews out of their mouths. As the girls tell Charlotte they feel their stomachs burning, Charlotte furiously goes back into the house, planning to kill the creature. However, when she nears the creature, Heather and Deidre enter the room with no trace of emotion on their faces. They quickly disarm Charlotte, knocking her down to the ground. When she wakes up, she asks the creature what it wants. Then, it proceeds to send another round of images through Charlotte's head about its birth and desire for world domination. In fear of what could happen, Charlotte grabs the bat and viciously hits the alien. As the creature gets smashed into a bloody pool, Heather and Deidre run away from the house and into the desert. Using the buggy, Charlotte quickly catches up to Heather, who is sprinting through the desert. Holding in her discomfort, Charlotte runs over her friend, sending a short rumble vibrating through the car. As Heather lies on the ground, Charlotte gets her weapon, preparing to finish her off. After a sudden jolt from Heather, Charlotte ends her childhood friend's life in tears as she throws swing after swing. Then, she sees Deidre running in the distance. Unable to turn the car back on, she runs after her. However, when Charlotte comes nearer, Deidre fights back as she shrieks in pain. As the two engage in a brawl, a car stops in the distance. From it, a man comes out to watch the gory scene from afar. Despite her struggles to overpower Deidre, Charlotte manages to throw her to the ground. However, just as Charlotte is about to end Deidre's life, she gets shot at by the man in the car. Worried about Deidre and her sickly appearance, the man helps her up and carries her to his car. At the same time, Charlotte quickly breathes back to life. Feeling a shot of pain in her body, she notices that the man has only shot her shoulder. In the distance, she could see the man's corpse lying on the ground beside the car. Knowing Deidre is still alive, Charlotte struggles to walk to the car. After seeing the man's corpse, she grabs the shotgun in his car and goes to the back of the mobile. She sees Deidre's mutilated body as her friend continues spewing out more of the black substance from her mouth. While Deidre mumbles to herself, Charlotte aims the gun at her beloved friend and apologizes as she pulls the trigger. Crying and somewhat relieved, Charlotte falls to the ground, happy that the creature is finally dead. However, her reprieve is cut short when she notices hundreds of alien meteors littering the sky, all aiming toward Earth.